Good morning, everyone. Hi there, Facebook. Welcome to another edition of Scan FYI. I'm Andrea Tarr. I'm the program director.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marybeth Kwapniewski. I'm the program coordinator at SCAN, and I'm happy to have with us today Don Lyons of PNC Wealth Management. Good morning, Don.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning,
Good, thank you.
Don.
How are you?
I'm well.
So we're here today talking about retirement. Scary subject.
Yeah. Well,
But
actually,
you're going to make it a positive one.
That's the intent.
well, Don, tell us a little bit about yourself. We know that you're with PNC Wealth Management, but tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do there?
So I am a wealth strategist with PNC Wealth Management. And basically what I do is I function and work with clients from a financial planning standpoint. And really financial planning is just assessing what your goals are and helping you plan out a step-by-step action format to help you to get to retirement or whatever your goals are. And quite frankly, within financial planning, there are actually 6 distinct areas. There is budgeting and cash flow management, insurance, retirement, investment planning, tax, and estate planning. And so I focus with my clients on all those areas. And retirement planning is just one element of your overall financial well-being in terms of how I work with clients, mapping out a plan of action.
Well, when we put this out there, we promoted it, and maybe this wasn't a great way to do it. We gave it a topic of, can you afford to retire?
Yes.
Because thank you. I hope we can, because I think, that, this has been obviously a very challenging year for lots of people, but
Yes.
even before this, the challenges of this year, it appears, we work with a population of older people. And for a lot of people, we see, they're still working. Gone are the days when you're 65 and you're out the door, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very different. So what do you have to really think about? What is it going to take for someone to manage to retire?
Yeah, so it's actually—
and not live in a tent.
Understood. So the reality is what you need to retire is actually a function of your individual circumstances. And every individual has a completely different situation than the next person. But in general, some rules of thumb, the standard rule of thumb is typically 8 to 10 times your annual salary from a retirement standpoint. So if historically speaking, if you made, let's say, $50,000, then the rule of thumb says you need anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 to retire and live comfortably. And that's a standard rule of thumb. Now, what really drives your retirement is really a function of your lifestyle. In other words, your expenses. So the more of a lifestyle you have in terms of your expenditures, the more you'll need for retirement. And that's really what drives the bulk of what you'll need to retire is, again, a function of your expenses overall.
And I guess a lot of people find out that you said 4 to 5 times your salary. Is that what you said? Or
8 to 10 times.
8 to 10 times. So for a lot of people, if you don't have that, I guess that's when you find out in retirement, you have to make a drastic change in your lifestyle.
Exactly.
Not just a little modification.
Exactly. And even more specifically, when we look at your expenses, it's really your expenses relative to how much you have in guaranteed income sources from either Social Security and or a pension that will cover those expenses. So for example, if a couple retires and their monthly expenses are $5,000 and they receive Social Security together of roughly $4,000, that means there's a deficit of $1,000 per month or $12,000 per year. And just based on that, by simply backing into that number, the estimate would be that that couple would need roughly $300,000 to $400,000 to retire and live comfortably to being able to necessarily pay for that $12,000 gap. Does that make sense to you? And that's really what drives a retirement. For example, if you ever notice, police officers, perhaps even civil servants, don't really retire with very large retirement balances. But what they do retire with are very generous pensions that will cover a good portion of their expenses. And so they typically don't necessarily retire with $400,000 or $500,000 balances, but again, the pension itself becomes critical.
Right. So Go ahead, Andrea. I don't
No,
want to
go
cut you
ahead.
off.
I'm formulating
So I
my
was going to say, so
question.
Don, once you've done that analysis with the client, then you're guiding them to try to make sure that they can maintain that expense level so that when they retire, they can be comfortable, or make adjustments now so that they can shoot for that goal.
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. So what happens is it's really, so when we look at the expenses, it's one of two things is going to happen, right? You can analyze your expenses and run an analysis to assess if retirement is feasible at your current expense level, right? And it very well could be that the expense level you currently have is sustainable long term. And so there could be a situation where no adjustments need to be made. But what happens is if you run an analysis and it's determined that you're falling short, then it's where we talk about expense reductions, looking at the budget with a fine-tuned comb to determine where can we make adjustments within the budget to make sure we have a successful retirement. And obviously, if the expense reduction portion is enough, then what happens is, unfortunately, as you mentioned earlier, Andrea, you're seeing folks work well past the ages of 65, 70, et cetera. So unfortunately, delaying retirement also becomes an option.
Mm-hmm.
Well, certain expenses never go away. And I know that you had sent us some notes, and my eye goes right to the part where it says retirement risk, longevity, number one.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you're lucky enough to have a very long, healthy life, which more and more people are doing, that really does put you at some risk.
Absolutely, and that's actually the biggest risk in retirement. When we look at advancements in technology, healthcare, humans are actually healthier than they have been historically, and
Right.
so the
We're
good
living
thing is
longer.
we're living longer. I would say the bad thing is, if you want to say it that way, is that we're living longer, and so the longer you live, that puts more pressure on how much money you should have saved up for retirement, and even really how much money you would have to last perhaps another 20 or 30 years, even in retirement. Because historically speaking, you would think, okay, well, I'm retired at 65 or 67. Maybe I have 10 or 15 years left. Not the case now. People are living 20, 30 years even in retirement. So longevity is going to be the biggest risk in retirement.
And the thing is, in that longevity, healthcare.
Yes.
Healthcare becomes obviously a huge component, right?
Absolutely.
That could be your biggest expense for a lot of people.
Exactly. It's actually, studies show that an average couple will spend upwards of $285,000 in retirement. That doesn't even include long-term care expenses, and so healthcare costs can be a huge drag on retirement. And one of the ways that I suggest people who have the ability to do so to plan for healthcare expenses is through an HSA. And what that does is it really offers a triple tax benefit because the money goes in on a pre-tax basis, it grows tax deferred, and then as long as you withdraw for qualified medical expenses, no additional taxes. But the only caveat is you have to have a high deductible plan through your employer to be able to qualify for an HSA. But that is one
Which
way
is
you
a
can
health savings account.
exactly
HSA.
health savings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Here we go. You're teaching.
Let me also just mention to our listeners out there that if you after this is over and you want to get in touch with Don from PNC Wealth Management, we'll put all of his contact info out there for you, so you'll have no trouble reaching out to him if you want to get some of his advice.
Thank you.
Another thing that you have on the list that makes me think, because here we're coming into the holiday season, and so you've got withdrawal rate. So you have money,
Yes.
you have money set aside, whatever it is. And I know that a lot of times with, I'll say grandparents are very maybe too generous even in helping kids and grandkids, and actually at the expense of putting themselves in jeopardy. Not a good thing.
Yes, not a good thing at all. Withdrawal rates are critical. The standard withdrawal rate in retirement is typically anywhere from 4 to 5%. And that's a rate of withdrawal that ensures that you won't exhaust your money long term. Once you go above that 4 to 5% withdrawal rate, you run the risk of exhausting your assets. So sometimes I've seen clients where the withdrawal rate starts at 6%. Keep in mind, this is 6% withdrawal from 2020, perhaps to 2050 and longer. And so what happens is that level of withdrawal over time actually it depletes their overall assets. In fact, if you look at the example I provided earlier of the couple having a deficit of $1,000 per month, and say they need about $300,000 to $400,000, that's on a withdrawal rate of 3 to 4%. And so having a sustainable withdrawal rate in place is going to be critical. And to your point, that is a big issue where grandparents are very generous, specifically with grandchildren, where they're just giving large sums of money to their grandchildren, whether it's paying for college educational expenses or just a birthday gifts. It becomes a lot over time. In fact, even more of an issue than that is what we call the sandwich generation. And that's the couples or the individuals who have younger children that they're supporting, yet still are supporting their parents.
Right.
So that becomes, whether it's caretaking for their parents, that also becomes an issue as well.
And Don, required minimum distributions are not what's where I'm looking for. Not required. I mean, I'm trying to avoid the word required, right. Not required this year.
Right. So under the CARES Act, RMDs for this year have been simply eliminated for this year only, for 2020. So if you haven't already taken an RMD, you don't have to take it this year. And that's only for this year only. That's part of the CARES Act, which was passed obviously earlier this year, essentially.
So for a lot of people COVID, you can't not talk about it no matter what topic you're involved in. And have you noticed that that's impacted many of your clients, that it's changed their plans?
Absolutely. So what you find is it's really based on where you are economically. For those clients who are on the lower end of the economic spectrum, they have been hurt more significantly than those who are at the higher end of the spectrum. And that's just what I've seen from my observation. And so what you find is that some individuals who are kind of in the middle ground, they've been impacted as well, because now the question becomes, can you retire given the current environment, right? Given the increased risk of healthcare costs and the increased risk of longevity being on the opposite end of the spectrum. So we have seen clients who have had struggles from a financial standpoint in this environment. Obviously, we have massive unemployment at this point. And so that certainly puts a lot of pressure on your ability to save because you have no income and to provide for your future going forward.
So I always think that for some people, there's this thought that, well, I don't really make enough money to bother seeing a financial planner. And is there a point where, and all right, maybe, I don't know, maybe if you're 18, you don't need to see someone, but is it ever too late, or at any point in your life, is it the right thing to do to plan for the future?
It's never too late, and it's never too early to plan for your future. I think the earlier the better. Even if you are 18 years of age, it can only benefit you to see a financial advisor at 18 years of age, because quite frankly, at 18, you have time on your side, which means you have the ability to make mistakes and recoup those mistakes long term. So I think the earlier the better. In fact, one of the things that I'm big on is educating younger children in the areas of financial planning, because as they get older, they will certainly reap the benefits of having a sound financial plan in place, or at least speaking with a financial advisor. And even if you are late in life, or late 60s, early 70s, it's never too late to plan for your retirement or see a financial advisor, especially if you've never dealt with one in the past.
All right, so that's good to know for people.
Definitely. Definitely.
I think living in New Jersey maybe is not the friendliest place for people to retire. Sorry, I live in New Jersey too, but I think it's, part of the reality. And when you think about, can you afford to retire? I also think for a lot of people, they think, well, I have to leave. I can't live where I'm in the state where I'm living. I mean, are you finding that?
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, I know like you said, you're a New Jersey resident, but unfortunately, New Jersey is a high tax state. And so what you do see is, I actually have a lot of clients in New Jersey, and what I've found is that most of them will literally cross the border to Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania doesn't tax retirement income. So I've seen a lot of clients move from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, Delaware, and even further down south, obviously Florida being the big one. But a lot of clients will leave their state based on the state's income tax. And obviously, with the passage of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, that placed a limitation on the SALT tax, the state and local income real estate taxes, that you can deduct from your taxes at $10,000. And so in a high tax state, now New Jersey, that becomes problematic. So you
Oh, Mary
certainly have
Beth,
CFPB.
not
So a
good.
lot of realtors are getting phone calls
Yep.
after they see this.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not a news flash. Unfortunately, you
No.
know, New Jersey it's just expensive, but
Yes.
maybe that's all the more reason to really guard your assets as carefully as you possibly can for, you know, for planning ahead, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
What is it? If you don't make a plan,
Plan
we
to
don't,
fail.
there's no, well, planning, you know, it's all about
Right.
planning. And I
Absolutely.
guess, COVID,
Right.
put a lot of things into focus for a lot of people who maybe never thought about any of this before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
But to go back to something that we were talking about, when people are helping their grandchildren and maybe being far too generous, is it your recommendation that you have to really look out for yourself before you would look out for anyone else?
Absolutely. I actually had a client who was literally giving he was paying for his grandchildren's education to
Yeah.
the tune of roughly $70,000 per year. And so I simply asked him a question. I said, listen, can you borrow to pay for your retirement? The answer is no, right? But you can borrow to pay for your grandchildren's educational expenses. And so there's always a happy medium of, do I pay for my grandchildren's college education or do I pay for my retirement? And quite frankly, you want to put yourself in a position where you can pay for yourself first. Then if you have the means, then you support your grandchildren. But I've seen it time and again. It happens a lot. And I always tell clients, you can't borrow for your
No.
retirement.
No.
Fund yourself first.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One more reason why you have to make yourself your own priority, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's critical. Critical.
So here we are coming to the end of 2020, which, wow, hard for me to believe we're in the month of December. I mean, is there any year-end advice that you want to offer people to start preparing for 2021?
Yes, I think one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is assuming if you're not retired and you're still working, I always encourage clients to increase their retirement plan contributions. I always recommend that you enroll in automatic annual increases of at least 1% per year. Because if you're doing, let's say, 5%, and you would increase that to 6%, well, you've effectively increased your savings rate by 20%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a 20% increase if you go from 5 to 6%. And if you go from 6 to 7, that's a 16% increase. So I always recommend that you run automatic annual increases. The other for this year alone is really charitable giving. So if you're in a position where you're in a high tax bracket, you may owe taxes, charitable giving is going to help you. In fact, this year alone, due to the coronavirus, you're allowed to deduct 100% of a cash contribution. That's unlike the years before. So charitable giving is also key. The other one that comes to charitable giving is, although the RMDs have been suspended for this year, some people still have very large retirement balances. And so what you could do is take advantage of what's known as the qualified charitable distribution, which simply means you take from your IRA and automatically donate that RMD or required minimum distribution to charities. That's going to help you out long term. You can also engage in tax loss harvesting, where you simply sell off some of your investments to take advantage of the taxes to wipe away your income, essentially. Those are some things that I think individuals should be doing as we close out this year and head into next year.
All right. You heard it from the expert.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Don, thank you so much for being with us today. And once again, I'll remind everyone that we'll put all of Don's contact info in there, so you'll be able to reach out to him.
Thank you.
All right. So always remember, if it's important to you, it's important to us. I'm Andrea Tarr. We'll see you next time on Scan FYI. Don Lyons, thanks for being with us. And Mary Beth, I'll see you later.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.